we've lived in essentially the greatest lie ever been told. All the tech monopolies, food monopolies, the World Bank, the CIA, all of our school systems are built on that. The US currency has effectively failed multiple times, right? It's lost 95%, 98% of its value in the last 80, 100 years. Bitcoin, it's going to be the new internet.
Please introduce yourself.
Successful entrepreneur, and I've had lots of success and lots of failure. Company that I built from my house to $500 million in value and went to zero and lost everything. 2017, I couldn't pay rent. I had some knowledge of Bitcoin and I held a little bit by trying to essentially disprove what I was saying on Bitcoin, trying to attack, see where the weaknesses in Bitcoin. I realized I was the weakness. You are the system. There is no other enemy, it's you. And until you realize that, move into Bitcoin and spend in Bitcoin and move your time, it is you.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? Welcome back to Real Talk with Zuby. Today, I am in the wonderful capital of El Salvador, San Salvador, and I am here with a wonderful guest. He is an entrepreneur, he's an investor, he's the author of the book, The Price of Tomorrow, and this is Jeff Booth. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zuby. Great to see you. My first time on your show.
Awesome. Happy to have you here. I've been wanting to have you on for quite a while. For my listeners who aren't familiar with who you are, Jeff, please introduce yourself.
You just did. I would say I'm started out as an entrepreneur, always curious, made lots of mistakes, learned a lot all the way through, came into tech entrepreneur, saw the technology, where technology was going, the productivity of technology, and that should be deflationary. All of my friends who are building tech companies, some of the giant tech companies today, everything we were doing was driving efficiency, essentially removing labor to provide more efficiency. And when you did that, your business grew because you were giving more value. And I couldn't connect to the dots to why, if everyone I knew, everything was building on top of technology, why weren't prices falling? So that's what, that kind of 10-year journey of asking that question and then coming to the conclusion, oh my God, we're living in a system measuring this and it can't, and that system can't allow productivity to flow generally to us, inspired me to write The Price of Tomorrow. I wrote that not because I wanted to. I wrote that because I worried about the world my kids would grow up in if that were allowed to continue. And that also, even though I was a Bitcoiner before that book, and when I say Bitcoiner, I had some knowledge of Bitcoin and I held a little bit, but it wasn't until investigating what could solve the other problem that I really started going down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin. So it was through the process of writing the book I was getting deeper and deeper on Bitcoin. And then afterwards, by trying to essentially disprove what I was saying on Bitcoin, spending probably 15,000 hours trying to see where the weaknesses in Bitcoin, I realized I was the weakness. If I moved my time from the system stealing my energy to the system healing my time, other people's time, the more people that moved, it was inevitable that the world would change towards Bitcoin. And so I realized I had agency. I had complete agency of the world I wanted to see. I could bend reality literally in the direction by just applying my time to the thing I wanted to happen.
And how did you first come across Bitcoin?
So my first time, like everybody, I had a very big tech company and an incredible tech team. And my tech team came to me and said, you have to look at this. And I trusted them implicitly. And I was too busy. And so that was in 2011, 2012. Should have listened to them. So no, I have these other things. I'll look later and everything else. And again in 2015, just done. And then it wasn't until 2017 that I bought a little, watched it, and it was 2019 that I really started paying way more attention.
Yeah, it's interesting. Your timeline is actually very similar to mine. in terms of when you first heard about Bitcoin and then when you first actually started to investigate it and buy some. I first got some Bitcoin in 2017, November 2017, about exactly
Yeah.
8 years ago. But I studied computer science. And so just kind of being in that field and being interested in technology, I heard the word Bitcoin here and there, but I didn't know if it was just a payment system like PayPal or if it was like a in-game video game currency or something. I didn't really look into it until 2017, and then it was like the spark went off.
It's funny. How could we be so dense being in technology and not seeing it at that time?
Yeah.
So and then you play it forward now, how insanely early we are. People think we're late, but we're so insanely early to this process. What an incredible time to be alive.
When it comes to skincare, short-term fads don't deliver long-term results. Science does. That's why I use OneSkin. Their formulas are powered by the OS1 peptide, a patented peptide built on longevity science that's proven to target aging at the cellular level. I've been using their OS1 face and OS1 eye products for the last few months, and I love how they help my skin stay looking fresh and healthy, even when my little baby keeps me up at night. OneSkin's products are designed to layer effortlessly and even replace multiple steps in your routine, making long-term skin health simpler and smarter at any age. Born from over 10 years of longevity research, OneSkin's OS1 peptide is proven to target the cells that cause the visible signs of aging, helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you age. And for a limited time, OneSkin is making it even easier to stay consistent, with up to 30% off your first 3 subscription orders when you use code ZUBY at oneskin.co/Zuby. That's up to 30% off with code ZUBY at oneskin.co/Zuby. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you.
So when you say that in a free market, it should be deflationary rather than inflationary, can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so everything, look around this room or any room, or have somebody that's watching this podcast just imagine their life. Everything that came into existence came in first by somebody's mind, a thought in your mind. And that then to take that thought and to create value, an idea out of your mind, to create value for somebody else, it's competing. Those thoughts, those ideas, those actions are competing with what was there before and we're all using. And anything that doesn't provide more value fails. Why? Because we don't use it. Right? The only things we use, and they have to provide way more value. They can't be just a tiny little bit better. They have to be like 10 times better. Something that then we instantly move our time because we gain more value. So if we are both sides of that choice, right? We are one side, we have to create more value in a free market with everybody else competing to provide value. And the other side, we only use the more value. So out of that simple understanding, how could prices go up in a free market? It's impossible because we're the actors. We are the choosers of the more value. And nobody tells us what we can and can't buy. We buy the things or services that give us more value. We're constantly on a hunt for more value. And the entrepreneurs, with all of their ideas, are trying to solve that. So in that process, now why this is hard to see is because it's never existed. That what I just said is true for sure. Another thing that is true for sure is that prices in that world fall to the marginal cost of production. Why? Because if you created something, the margin that you create, and then everybody moves to your thing. In a free market, all the other competitors see your thing, and they know there's margin there to do it better, faster, cheaper. And so they compete with you, trying to create more value for society, because the only way they can win is deliver more value to other people. So that it's a constant competition that is faster and faster and faster, driving prices, and the output is prices fall or value increases, right? But you couldn't just imagine somebody going the other way. I'm going to create less value for somebody, way less value, and being successful. Who would use it? Unless you were in a dictatorship where you had to use it, right? A control system, not a free market, or or a regulated environment that makes you use it. But the free market still attacks those things. It just doesn't attack those things in your country, right? It attacks those things in other countries, and then it moves to that market moves to another country. So you cannot stop what I just said. The prices continue to fall. And I use this example often, but it's important. It's just a toy example. But a calculator app.
Okay.
You used to pay for a Texas Instruments calculator, all the buttons and everything else. And then when the calculator was digitized, and the digital content was free, the first calculator app on Apple on the App Store cost money, and a lot of people used it because they were saving money from the calculator they used to buy. And then every calculator got better, cheaper, faster until the calculators are free. You think it's hard to believe you ever paid for a calculator. You'd never pay for a calculator today, right? So if that process, marginal cost falling to zero from the same process, so the prices fall to the marginal cost of production. The marginal cost of production is a line of code that is zero. Then you have to ask the next question. What about the marginal cost of a line of code created by other lines of code? It would be zero too, right? So AI, all of it, will be going to zero. If it's not, in a lot of these models are already completely free. And you can use them free. You can download them at GPT for all, put them on your computer, and you can have access to the entire history of information on your computer without the internet for free.
Yeah.
And the newest, latest model costs a little bit of money until it's copied everywhere else, and everybody competes, and then it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So the process is always happens. And we can see ourselves in the process, right? It has to look like that. So then you have to ask the other question, and what stops that process, right? Why do we believe inflation is required, right? Because it's not, when I said the natural state of the free market is deflation, what that means is every new mind competing to provide you value makes that happen faster. You wouldn't have to work, and your life would get better by everyone else competing to provide value in a free market. But that means we've never lived in that. We've lived in essentially the greatest lie ever been told, right? But really, and we believe that greatest lie ever been told. All of our school systems are built on that. Every single, all the tech monopolies, food monopolies, the entire structure, the three-letter words, the World Bank, the CIA, the WEF, all of it exists. All the regulatory framework, all the laws are protecting that other structure. So we don't even ask. We don't even ask. I did a presentation for some kids in Colombia, and one of the students who, this is a value investing course, the same one that Warren Buffett went to, and then value investing course. After I gave this presentation, one of the students said, but don't we need inflation?
Yeah.
And I after I gave that presentation, and I said, so let's examine that. So why? Then I asked him why. He said, well, then people wouldn't buy. And I said, okay, let's take first. Let's ask you on, do you buy computers, even though they fall in price and you get more valuable? He said yes. What about a TV? He said yes. What about a phone? Yes. Would you buy food? Yes. So you do buy, right? You buy when you want something that meets your needs. So so you know that that's not true. But let's now argue the other side of what you just said. What would the world look like if you built a system that the only reason you bought is because your money would devalue if you didn't? Would that seem like a good system to build? And who would win by that system and who would lose? And you went, right? And that lie that we've always lived in, that the entire foundation of people's existence exists in, starts to crumble. And they have to rectify which system do they want to give energy to.
Yeah. It's very fascinating, this lie that we need inflation, because it's one of those things that has been, whether or not someone has even studied economics, I guess in this case specifically Keynesian economics. I remember learning in school that we need inflation, otherwise people don't buy things. It's interesting that that's taken a root, because as you said, if you even just think about your own life and other people's, and you think about the things that you spend your money on, very few people I think are spending money because they're consciously thinking, well, if I don't spend it, it's going to be inflated away. That's not typically how we make purchasing decisions. We think this is something I need or want, and therefore I'm going to buy it. I need it, my family needs it, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking, oh gosh, despite being very aware of fiat money inflation, I'm not thinking, okay, well, this $100 or pounds is worth this much now. Next year, based on the inflation rate, that 100 is now going to be worth like 92, 93. So I better go and buy that thing now so I don't lose that 7-8%. Nobody thinks like that, but at the same time, so many people have kind of just absorbed this idea of, well, it's one of the biggest impediments for people even accepting or adopting the idea of Bitcoin, when you explain that it's the opposite, it's deflationary, and people respond like that's a bad thing. They'll say that, no, that's the problem with Bitcoin. It doesn't make sense as money because it's not inflationary. And it's like, because programming is strong.
Programming is strong. It's incredible. Because where you said in some places in the world, they're taking their money and they're racing to the supermarket before the supermarket changes their prices.
Yes.
And those people understand Bitcoin really fast.
Yes.
Because they've lived in these hyperinflation. And then we look at those countries, that those countries actually exist because of a monetary system that the US imposes on the world, and their currencies have to fail faster. And the US currency has effectively failed multiple times, right? Going off the gold reserve, repricing. It's lost 95%, 98% of its value in the last 80, 100 years.
Yeah.
And because it's a relative value to all those other currencies, people go, I can't believe they're doing it in those other countries. Well, they're doing it themselves, and theirs. It's ludicrous. Right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
The programming is strong.
Yeah, I think the correct term is, I think it's what you could call I think it's called a region beta paradox, where things are not sufficiently bad for people to do anything. So in many other countries, in certain African countries, South American countries that have recently experienced or are currently experiencing true hyperinflation, people see and feel it day to day, to the point that they're looking for an exit, a way out of the system. Something that's pernicious, I think, in the West, so whether you're dealing with dollars or pounds or euros, for example, there is inflation. Everyone's aware that there's inflation. We hear a lot of talk about, the cost of living crisis. Everyone's aware the value of goods and the price of goods and services is going up. But because it's like 4%, 5%, 6%, 8% per year, it's small enough that it's not creating sufficient pain quickly enough for people to really wake up and be like, oh my gosh, I need to do something. If prices double after 15 or 20 years, you notice it. You'll think back to, wait, this used to cost this much 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But on a year-to-year basis, the difference is somewhat imperceptible. So I think that itself is actually one of the barriers for people really sort of waking up to this issue and going, oh my gosh, we need to change into a different system.
Yeah. So two parts of that. So frogs boiling in a pot, and you've only captured the very little bit of it, because the inflation rate is one thing. The market should be faster and faster deflation. So this is scarcity, this is abundance, and so the market you live in should be when people are measuring the inflation rate, they're measuring the inflation rate from zero. I'm talking about the free market is deflation, and it might be deflationary today. It might be deflationary today at 10%. So when they're saying I was stolen from 6% and they're mad, they should be really mad. They should drive to, and then they should ask themselves, what could I do from this system, being mad at it, that could solve the problem? Because I'm in it.
Yes.
You cannot solve a system problem from a system. And so they're inside the system, spending all of their money in that system, yelling at somebody else without turning the mirror around and looking at them, when they can just exit the system and move to Bitcoin. And so you see this cascade across society. And if they measured their lives, if what their fear, they're moving into fear, they're moving into scarcity, they think it's somebody else, right? They think Joe Rogan will be over and over and over again on all of this. Tucker Carlson will be, and everybody's pointing at every different enemy. And some of this is true, but what it's really pointing at is we don't want to take agency to move ourselves out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
We're still in it. Absolving our agency with somebody else, it has to be somebody else's fault. A system problem can't resolve a system problem. We live in a system that its base money is lent into existence. So there's no money, and it's lent into existence with an interest rate. So you're paying for something that had no cost forever, and you live on top of that system. And then that system has to grow exponentially in debt. Why does it have to grow exponentially in debt? Because it can't allow the free market. It has to keep on rising debt. If you let the free market work, this whole system would collapse. All of the money would be gone. There would be no money.
Mm-hmm.
All of the banks would fail. All of the houses would fail. Everything would fail. So no one wants to let that happen. So we just make believe that this person can solve the problem, or this problem, there's this enemy inside the system, and it's all the same system. There's in what I just said there should, if you're still in that system, or if you're measuring Bitcoin in fiat dollars, I'm talking to you.
Yes.
Right? I'm talking directly to you. You are the system. There is no other enemy. It's you. And until you realize that, move into Bitcoin and spend in Bitcoin and move your time, it is you. It's easy to, it's so hard to face that fact that it's us. It's so easy for our egos to say it's somebody else. So that's what captures us inside that system. And it continues to capture us inside that system. You don't have to pay any attention. You can just move your time, energy to a new system that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's challenging because what you're talking about is like there are layers.
Totally.
Right? So last time I checked, only about 3 to 4% of the population of the world, I believe, have a single Satoshi, which is any type of fraction of a Bitcoin, right? So let's say 96% of people have absolutely no Bitcoin exposure whatsoever. And then even of those who do, it takes a while to get your head around what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because even if people are invested in Bitcoin and interested in it, naturally, we're still coming from this fiat system and mentality where it's like, okay, Bitcoin is $10,000, $50,000, $100,000, right?
In fiat terms.
Yes, in
Right,
fiat terms.
yeah.
So it's difficult to, even as someone who is a Bitcoiner, it's difficult to truly just think in those terms when you're living in a world where 99% of people, outside of a Bitcoin conference or an event like this, right? 99% of people wouldn't even know what you were talking about if you talked not just at the Bitcoin level, but at the pure, almost like a purist Bitcoin level, where you're not even making the comparisons to fiat anymore. I think it's very challenging for someone to get their head around. It takes a long time.
So that's exactly why I go on these podcasts or say it over and over and over again. And I watch people. I'll say something that I get this type of comment generally all the time. I knew what you were saying was true, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I had to listen to it over and over and over and over. And once the light went on, it took my breath away. It completely took, because I had to change. Bitcoin wasn't changing. I had to change to move my time into the honest system. And until I did, I couldn't see everything that you see. Right. And so why I say we're so insanely early is when you just use those stats. If if only 4% of people even have a Satoshi, right? If the majority of those people don't understand this, then the majority of those people, when the Bitcoin goes up in price in relative to the fiat, they will sell their Bitcoin back to that. The majority of those people will be scammed out of their Bitcoin by that fiat system, by leveraging it, because they're still operating in the fiat system. And by the way, it has to look like this. As great a change as a lie that we've lived in for 5,000 years, that keeps on repeating throughout society, that we are a part of, that a new truth is being imposed by a discipline, it would have to look this chaotic for the people that weren't living in the new system, right? And all of these challenges, it looks exactly as you would expect it to look like. And so when you hear the things that you hear, I have empathy. I have massive empathy from those people that are going to do that and lose their Bitcoin or go back to the fiat system and think it was somebody else. But they don't have to, right? If they investigate this and everything and move their time, they will be part of a system that is so beautiful, because it's built on truth, it's built on free market, it's built on trust, it's built on and when you're living in that energy and you're surrounded by people in that energy, it expands, right? It's why, and my own personal journey, like not knowing it and then knowing it. So you didn't know it, I didn't know it, no one knew it, right? And there's all these different layers of understanding. And as you go deeper in layers, my own personal journey, I told myself a lie, right? I knew about Bitcoin. I was famous OG Bitcoiner, right? And all these podcasts. And 90% of my time was in the fiat system, on boards and all of my technology companies in the other system. Yeah. And it wasn't until I faced that in me that I had a hedge against the system collapse that I was causing to collapse, right? And concentrating wealth out of that same system, thinking that I was better, right? That I couldn't. That's why we started Ego Death Capital, right? To resolve my paradox, or to resolve my conflict, to be able to, so I could move my time here. But what people don't know, and they couldn't know, and I couldn't know at the time, that leap of faith to go here to that new system, it was just as hard for me, because I had to disregard all of the money I was making here and say, I might not make any money here, right? I might try to set up a fund that never gets set up. I might, and so I had to talk to my wife and say, we're going to go for at least a year with no income. And then if this is successful, then we're going to build something here. But I just can't do this anymore, right? I'm not asking anybody to do what I did. It's everybody in their own time. But from the world I used to see, I missed all of what's happening with all of what the scale and all of the different layers of the technology or the protocol that are emerging, because I moved and could help fund those entrepreneurs and help lead it. And so now what I see, I understand. I see a totally different world than most people stuck over here, because I'm in a different energy than I was 5 years ago.
I understand what you're saying ideologically and intellectually. I wonder though, at the same time, of course, I mean, you're a successful entrepreneur. So I imagine you would have hit some level of what we could call escape velocity, wealth, comfort, prior to coming to some of these realizations. But for the average everyday person, even someone who understands what you're saying, I mean, we live in a fiat world, right?
Can I just say, I need to stop you there because of this.
Okay.
There's an assumption, right, that successful entrepreneur, and I've had lots of success and lots of failure. Okay. I round-tripped a company that I built from my house to $500 million in value, and went to zero and lost everything. Okay. 2017, I had zero. Okay. Completely zero. So it wasn't but I had everything I could want. I left that company, and I had all of my relationships. I had all of everything, and building back value all was out of my mind.
Okay.
Right. No. But I know I go on some podcast, and then by the way, it was only 2021 that we started EgoDesk. So building back value, and then telling your wife, we're going to take another jump, right? When you had nothing, and you almost, when I say I had nothing, I couldn't pay rent. We had 3 kids. I couldn't pay rent at the end of the month.
And this is which year?
This is in late 2017.
Okay.
So there's an assumption that other people aren't like you, right? You can create value at any time by finding a way to create value for other people. That's how the free market works.
Okay.
I've just never been afraid of. I haven't been afraid of going to zero because money was never the thing I was after, right? And so, but now, each person, I don't want to impose my belief system on somebody else, right? They should do whatever they want.
Sure.
But if I was stuck there, and I had fear, and I was paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, and I heard this message, I would try to get a little unstuck.
Okay.
I would be curious, and I would maybe move 1 or 2% of my time into it. I might stop buying coffees every day, and I might put that money into Bitcoin.
Okay.
And from there, as I started to understand it more, and started to be part of it more, I might go to meetups. As I started to understand it more, if I still needed my job and everything else, I would put a box around amount of time, and I would create, in this box, I'm only going to try to find something in Bitcoin that I can provide value on, my own genius that I can provide value to other people on. And so I'd keep this, but I'd box amount of time. You could find any time, right? If you in that box, I'm only doing that, and I would try to make that box expand, so I could leave my job. Right? That's if I felt like I had to do that.
Yeah.
I would. So I guess what I'm getting at in a different way. Every single person on this planet has genius.
Has
genius.
Genius. Okay.
Absolute genius. Something that they're better at that just naturally than other people.
You think that's true?
I think that's true. I actually think that's true. I see it in everyone. And most times we want to focus on what people aren't good at instead of their genius. And I think if you take that genius into now remember where we are. The world we live in right now, or the world most people live in, is turning into a surveillance state and a control system really fast. And they're getting more and more scared. And they don't know it's their energy feeding that system. And so what would the free market value if everyone lived in this system and you didn't, and you could help them out of it? Wouldn't that create tons of value for people? But Zuby, what you do is that. What Natalie Brunel did when she, there's so many of the OGs or people that I know, I watched their journey, them move their genius into something to help others. And what happened? Exploded. And that doesn't have to be a podcast. That could be whatever it is that you're the best at, and hone that skill inside something that can provide value. But if you had a world that what you just said, 96% of people, and probably 99.9% of people truly, when you understand Bitcoin, are stuck in that old paradigm, wouldn't that be the place an entrepreneur would go to create value?
Yeah. I guess I'm wondering how, and look, Bitcoin's existed now for 17, 18 years. I guess I'm wondering, how do you, when I think of Bitcoin adoption, obviously it has increased over time. It used to be 0.0 recurring, and now let's say we're at 3 or 4%. And sure, in that 3 and 4%, not everyone understands things to the depth that you're speaking about. But what do you think adoption, not the curve, but what do you think that process looks like? Because I find no matter the subject, it's very difficult to quote unquote wake people up, right? People have norms. We're all brought up with certain ideas and societies, and there's a framework of things going on. For most of our lives, Bitcoin didn't even exist. So this idea of escaping the matrix or the system, it was like, how? How that technology is not even there. So even with people who are very intelligent and very successful in their own right, as you've seen, even people who work in finance and they deal with money all day long, they're still, like when it comes to Bitcoin, very sort of slow on the uptake or very resistant, or I think oftentimes the ego gets in the way and prevents them from learning something new and just opening up their ears and listening. So how do you reach that tipping point?
They in their own time. If you so think about every, and now I won't talk about protocols, I'll talk about technologies.
Okay.
Think about every single technology innovation came against a monopoly that had it before it. Does a monopoly ever create the innovation?
Rarely. No.
Like never.
Doesn't need to.
Doesn't need to. Does a monopoly ever use the innovation? Like very rarely.
Yeah.
The innovation starts at the bottom up. The people that are most hurt by the monopoly, the people have the most opportunity to gain from the monopoly power that's stolen from them, and it starts there, and it moves up till it's too late, and the monopoly crumbles because it's a bottom up innovation. Blockbuster, Netflix, Kodak, digital camera, over and over and over again. Taxis, Uber, like you see it everywhere. Same process over. Always happens the same way. And monopoly does a pretty traditional thing. Tries to stop this at all costs. Tries to ignore it. Everything else. So now we live in a monopoly of money.
Okay.
Right. And of course, the monopoly of money is going to try to stop this at every different thing, because that monopoly of money is a leviathan everywhere. And the people that live in that monopoly, inside the top of that monopoly, they are winning at the expense of everyone else on the planet by being at the top. Why would they care about this innovation? They're in a spot that is stealing by their spot in that spot from all of the other 8 billion people on the planet. And they don't want to know this truth. It would hurt their ego. They would have to face the fact that they are at the top of monetary, essentially a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
That somebody else is losing at the rate they're winning. And so the higher you are at the top of that, the more you would want to fight this, ignore it, and everything else. And it doesn't matter, because the people that are here moving up are repricing them the entire time. We don't need anybody to go when you're ready.
Yeah.
And here's the beautiful thing about that. Like you said Africa before. Africa has literally been people mined, strip mined, for thousands of years to serve the West. If Africa decides to go first, or different nations in Africa, or forget even different nations, if individuals in those nations go first, they're going to reclaim that what always should have been theirs. When we visit here, it's unreal to see the progress in 4 years. It's like it's so staggering to me, coming now 3 times, watching that progress each time, but more when you're out on the streets here and you're seeing the smiles and the kids and the people walking through the street, like it's palpable, right? You have freedom, you have openness, you have a change in that. They used to live in this fear, and now you see other countries moving the other way, right? And so it's a stark reality. People that are looking through the media lens of what El Salvador is, they should come and visit, because it will shake you out of your matrix, out of the media, of what's actually happening when you have a free market.
Do you think that Obviously, you have massive conviction about Bitcoin. Do you think that on a long enough time frame, it's inevitable that true hard sound money will drive out the fiat system?
Inevitable. Why I say inevitable is, for me not to say inevitable would say somebody else controls me. It's inevitable because the time I put in and the time that you put in and the more time. So Bitcoin's a protocol that is us. We defend it. We run nodes. We purchase in it. We build on top of it. We build the layers on top of it. It is us. It's the best of us inscribed into the network for the best for us. And as long as I know that and keep doing it, I can bend reality to the world that I want to see. And people can join me. They don't have to join right now, but as long as there's enough of us doing that, it is unstoppable. And more will join, because more is going to be so imprisoned in the other system that this is going to create more value for them, and they're destined to join. And they want to put the best of them into something that's the best for their kids too. And so it is us, right? And so for me not to believe, so I'm going to kind of, and I'm not saying there aren't risks, but all the risks are in decentralization and security. Every risk you could think of is in decentralization and security, and you can actively remove those risks by taking participation in this network. So when you're scared of this, you're actually feeding the thing that you should be scared of, because it's you. So it's crazy. Like, it's great. We create reality.
Yes.
Each of us creates reality, and we bend it into shape. And yes, a lot of people get stuck in an old framework. And visionaries and leaders and entrepreneurs create a new framework, and then the world moves to the new framework. That's actually why this is so exciting. Somebody asked me after my speech yesterday, and they said they're almost ready to jump. They've watched all my podcasts and they're almost ready. But they said, how are you so sure?
Yeah.
I said, I'll put it this way. Why would I give any energy to the system I know is broken? Right? Even if on a small chance that this didn't work, I cannot believe I get to do this every day and increase the chances of it working with my energy. Right? Like, it's the best thing you could ever do, right? So if it all went to zero, which it won't, because
it can't. As long as anyone believes in it.
Exactly, it can't because of that, right? Then but just to give that, if it did, I would do the same thing again.
Yeah.
I cannot believe I get to do it.
We've been going very deep. I actually want to go up a level.
Okay.
Because most of my listeners are not Bitcoiners. This is not a Bitcoin specific podcast. So for people everyone's been hearing the word Bitcoin, but I'm sure there will be people who are listening who still don't really get what it is, right? They're understanding, they just have a very rudimentary understanding of what it is, and obviously very, zero conviction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So for someone who's just a layperson who's coming across this for the first time, they've heard the word Bitcoin. They don't know what it is. They don't know why they should care. Can you lay out the case for why the average everyday person should learn about Bitcoin and just give an overview about what it is, why anyone should care?
Yeah, so that's where I always start. The natural state of the free market is deflation. Because if they say that over and over and over again, and they know it's true, a lot of people nod when you say that. And what that nodding is, when you say that, is their subconscious knowing something that's true that they can't put their finger on. But if that's true, and it is for sure true, then they have to compare that to another statement that's also true, that a credit-based system can't allow deflation. And so they should let both those things hold, because they're both true statements. And not more true or less true. They're both completely true, but that creates a paradox, a riddle that you have to solve in your mind. And it creates a cognitive dissonance. And the first thing the cognitive dissonance. And I'm sure that while people are listening to this, the same thing's happening to them, and they're going to have to listen to it again and again and again. First, cognitive dissonance is trying to reconcile two true statements that are irreconcilable together, because a credit-based system that we live in can't allow the free market, right? And so I always start there, because unless people understand the problem, Bitcoin just looks like another coin or something else. It's just, you have to understand the problem so deeply, right? To understand that it means we've never lived in a free market, right? It means somebody else has always controlled you. You're a puppet on a string, and you're yelling at them, giving them more power. And so because it's taking yours. So I start there to understand, and then I move to, what would you expect to happen if the productivity from AI and robotics was sweeping across the globe? From a free market, you would expect prices to fall, your life to get easier and easier and easier and easier, even if you did nothing. Because you'd expect all of these things to happen. Is that how your life is? That what's happening to your life, or is something else happening? Because they now need to see which system they're in. Then I ask a different question. Instead of saying Bitcoin, I say, what would an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy look like? And so open, anybody could use it.
Do most people know what
So that's
that
why,
means?
but that's why I go through every word.
Okay.
Open, any single person in this other system can go at any single time without permission. They can just move. They're in a jail cell, screaming at the captors, right? And the jail cell door is open. And they could just move. They could just walk out, spend their time in a different thing, and save all that energy. But they're staying in the perceived jail cell that they create. So open, decentralized, nobody controls it, right? It's globally decentralized, nobody controls it. Secure, in 16 years, it has not been broken. It will not be broken. Protocol is an important word, because we think instead of protocols, we think in technologies, and protocols are winner take all. So protocols come in layers, and the internet is the last protocol people would know. And it came from early TCP/IP, and 4 layers later, and I'm simplifying it a little bit, was HTTP, which was invented by Tim Berners-Lee, that then became the internet. There's only one internet. You can use it if you have a VPN, the same internet, see the same information anywhere in the world, with an internet connection and a computer. You cannot stop it. You either participate on it or you don't, but it imposes a new reality. And if you think about what the internet did to all of the businesses that weren't on the internet, it imposed a new reality. The iPhone is built on top of the internet. All of the things that we didn't know we needed, we use every day, built on top of a new infrastructure. So that's what's happening in Bitcoin, layer by layer by layer. It's going to be the new internet. And it's bounded by energy. So the way the way proof of work works, and the way that, and you know this, but the way that, I'll just simplify it for the audience. It's connected to energy. Maybe I'll give an analogy. You're a baker, right? And I come in one day and I want to buy all of the bread you throw out at the end of the day, and I just want a deal on it. The next day, oh wow, okay, I'm going to produce 2 times as much bread, hoping I show up. I show up, I buy it all. Next day, you produce 4 times as much bread. I show up, I buy it all. Next day, you produce 8 times as much. I show up, I buy it all. Next day, you go, wow, this is a good gig. I'm going to buy more ovens. I'm going to hire more people. I'm going to produce 10,000 times more bread. I show up, I buy it all. What do we just do by having an always-on buyer of bread at the margin? We created abundant bread in the free market. That's what Bitcoin is. It will always pay you for your lowest cost energy, and it decentralizes energy around the world. It pays for the energy infrastructure around the world, and that's what bounds it to energy. So now you have an energy-backed protocol that cannot be broken. And then now ask the question from my first question: if the free market has always been deflation, prices should fall, your life should get better, and this protocol can't be broken and is bounded to energy, then if you measure your life from this protocol, all prices would fall forever. From this protocol, 5 years ago, my house cost 300 Bitcoin. My house now, from this protocol, costs 11 Bitcoin. If you measure energy prices in the same unit, you see the same thing. You would see exactly as you would expect to see in a free market. What would it look like if you were over in this other market? It would look like you were converting this to a piece of paper to then measure the world. And the piece of paper was losing value. So it would look like Bitcoin was going up. And both would be true, depending where your belief of the system was. So that's why I go through, unless somebody has to understand the problem first, right? And then, and really understand the problem. And then their mind searches for a solution. And then, is Bitcoin that solution? And why I specifically said protocol is it means all of the other coins, all of the other nonsense is going to go to zero against Bitcoin.
What's so interesting about that explanation is, in my experience, trying to orange pill people, as we say, trying to introduce them to Bitcoin and at least encourage them to do some research on it, is we were talking about how people are programmed into the system. And each of those points which is actually part of what makes Bitcoin the solution and makes it so revolutionary and innovative, is something that people use as a criticism against it, right? So people will be like, wait, but it's not controlled by any government or central bank, right? Like, the decentralization is a problem. If you're locked in that mindset, it's like, wait, this is decentralized. Like, that's a bad thing. The energy part, right? People is like, no, but it's wasting energy. It's using X amount of energy. It's bad for the environment and so on. Like those type of criticisms. It's wasteful. The idea of it being a protocol, winner takes all. It's like, no, you get that. Well, there's all these other blockchains and there's all these other coins and tokens. So like, why Bitcoin? Why can't it just be any of the other? Bitcoin is this is the old technology. There's going to be this one or this one or this one that's going to overtake it. So it's very interesting how the points that people use typically to like push back against it or to criticize it are the things that give it its value and make it special.
So if you were living in, and again, this is going to hit hard for people. If you're living in a system of control for 5,000 years, it's always been a system of control that takes you to war and kills people and then resets that system and then takes you to war again and kills people, and you believe in that system and you've always lived in it, then all the history books from all the winners that exploited the people over and over and over again would be created by the winners of all of that. The history book would be filled with all of that misinformation, and you would be consuming it over and over and over again, believing it's true. And that system would have so much to gain because it couldn't allow Bitcoin, because it would restore what should have been yours all the time, freedom. It would restore like complete freedom, where the only way you could make more money is by contributing value to society for somebody else, and they win by that too. Everyone wins. It takes a zero-sum game to an infinite game, and why that's such a huge deal, right? And why all of the things that would attack that system from that perspective, it would have to, because the system is built on those lies, right? So it would look like, so where are you consuming your media? And then in that media, it would be, and here's maybe a different way of saying this. I'm not surprised by anything. Like, nothing I see is surprising. If you have a model of the world, and that model of the world keeps on reinforcing that world, your model is probably correct, right? I mean, everything is just feeding back exactly what I would expect. And my model of the world is, but if your model of the world, you're constantly surprised, and there's another event, and then there's another event, and those people, and if you're consumed by a model of the world that you think it's everybody else, you're probably in the wrong model, right? If you're and if you're in the wrong model, if you're in this energy, media, watching the news of this belief system, you're still probably trapped in this other thing, but you're going to defend, a lot of times you defend your view because you can't be wrong. So if you're listening to this right now and you're doing that, or you feel like you're doing that, and these things aren't landing, I would just say, be curious. Just be curious to a potential another view that might challenge your view, because every single person that understands Bitcoin today, including me, had to go through the same thing to get there.
Yeah. How do you respond to people who think that it's a scam or a Ponzi scheme? That is common.
Yeah, so there's tons of scammers. In fact, every other blockchain. So you should have your readers link to this on my Finding Signal in a Noisy World.
Say that again.
Finding Signal in a Noisy World. It's an article I wrote years ago, before FTX, before all of these things, but it described what would happen from a very technical basis on Bitcoin as a protocol versus everything else, and it described why there was only one winner take all, but why, because most people measuring Bitcoin in a fiat price in a world of chaos, and in something other scammers could say, that's old tech, I have a better tech, that you'd have this explosion of these coins that would just be cheating people, and then people would be more afraid of Bitcoin because it's just a scam. Most things are a scam. And then in Bitcoin itself, there's a whole bunch of people trying to scam you, right? Because the world's filled with this. We've always lived in a system that is trying to be exploitative. So you have to do your careful research in Bitcoin and find who's been saying the same thing for a long time, proof of work. And what they've been saying, what they said 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago, is it the same now? Is it, or were they honest where they were wrong, right? And if they updated their model, because you see these people constantly changing every day to try to scam more money, but you see a whole bunch of people that would never, right? Their proof of work, and then aggregate around those people's information, learn from them, and they will point you to people to learn more that you won't be scammed, right? And then be one of those people.
What about people who think it's a government invention, or it's a road to lead people into central bank digital currencies, or it's created by the CIA, all these type of things, which I have heard some,
Like
generally
Tucker
intelligent people
saying
say.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say it is. Let's say I don't believe it is, but let's say it is. Why would the CIA create something that gave away their control, that gave away their funding source? Because I know that there's no back doors, because I run a node.
Yeah.
Right. I am a participatory network on the net, and I download the software and I audit the software, and the software that I control audits this thing every 10 minutes. That's what good. So even if they did, what they did by doing it is freeing humanity.
Yeah.
Which takes away their power. So it's a crazy thing to say,
yeah.
Right? Because why would they do that?
Yeah.
But even if they did, it doesn't matter anymore, because the nodes are in control. The hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of nodes that are decentralized around the world. You have to change this network. You have to go through them, right? And they will fight you and ensure that this thing is resilient, and every single person can add their voice to that by running a node, and And that's just the start of it. What's happening on top of it to produce privacy? If people should look at, if your audience isn't deep on Bitcoin, but some might be, they should look at Fedimint. They should look at Fedi. You download it from the App Store and download that. You have perfect privacy and money, perfectly private communications that cannot be seen by the company, cannot be seen by anybody, only you and the participant that you're doing with. So what's going to be needed in a more and more security state, right? Which CBDCs will exist, stablecoins will exist. Most people will transact not in Bitcoin; they'll transact in the stablecoin, and that is the surveillance state. But they don't have to participate in it. They can just move all their time to Bitcoin, and they can be totally private. And so a lot of people will participate on it because they, like a stable coin, where does it get its stability? It gets, yeah. So where does the US get stability from? From guaranteeing losses against Bitcoin. So it shouldn't be called a stable coin. It should be called a guaranteed loss coin, right? But people will, because a lot of people around the world see a US dollar as a safe haven against their own currency.
Because it is relatively.
Because relative.
Yeah.
A lot of people will be trapped in that system, not going all the way. And they'll lose their money in that system by not understanding this.
Yeah. I find a useful metaphor with fiat currency to think of it like ice cubes. And,
Yeah, melting ice cubes.
Pounds, dollars, Swiss francs, those are slower melting ice cubes. Lots of other currencies are very, very rapidly melting ice cubes, but they're all ice cubes. And so sure, it's better to have the ones that melt more slowly than the ones that are, fizzling out after a few minutes. But, either way, people have to switch. I do have one more question just around the sort of challenges towards Bitcoin. Because actually, funnily enough, on my flight over here, I was sitting next to someone who's a very smart guy who actually works in the tech sector, and we were having a whole conversation about Bitcoin because I was telling him I'm coming to this event, and he dabbled in it, but sort of treated it kind of like a stock, something you just buy and you sell. So I was trying to go a little bit deeper and explain, but he's quite technologically sophisticated, and he had a question about quantum computing.
Yep.
And I am not savvy or sophisticated enough technically to answer that question pretty well, right? So people asking, well, a few years from now, is quantum computing going to be able to break and hack the Bitcoin network? Will that defeat Bitcoin security? So what's the answer to that question?
So let's go in a couple layers on this first too. So there is not yet a will quantum break this encryption. To create error correction and logical qubits that as you add on more logical qubits, the errors increase. Okay? And even some of the tests right now that have said where we are in quantum are kind of fake tests. They're giving an information that they want it to portray to actually reduce the noise, right? But I think, what are we up to? About 24 logical qubits, and to break SHA-256, you have to get into about, at the lowest case, about 1,750 logical qubits. So we're likely years and years away. But why I said the consensus mechanism matters, and we're years away if it can ever be broken. Why the consensus mechanism matters is what's going on right now is a lot of process, a lot of work. I'm doing a bunch, so are my partners at EgoDeath, so are countless people around thinking through this problem, and then what would we upgrade the protocol to look like, to the consensus mechanism to look like? How would we agree on what it would look like to protect against a quantum attack? When people ask that question, though, it's all of the nuclear codes are under the same, right? all of the banking system is under the same. So the entire system, everything would have to be upgraded. So it's not just Bitcoin. And so they're seeking safety. They're saying, effectively what they're doing is, I have all my money in a bank, and it's not my money. The bank can take it any time. In fact, the bank is stealing my money on a constant basis. And the same quantum attack would happen at the bank, but I know it's stealing my money. Right? That would happen over here, right? If it happened, and I'm using this. I'm afraid of quantum over here, while my money's being stolen, right? So just move your time and contribute to it, and you'll start to see all of the potential attack vectors too, and you'll start to care about those attack vectors, and you'll learn more about those attack vectors and how to prevent those attack vectors. So I would say, now, I am actually not convinced that quantum can ever attack Bitcoin. As a technologist, I would say that I will not discount the probability that it might at some point, but I believe what we're going to see in quantum is it won't be able to solve this problem. It won't be able to solve this problem. And I think that comes from our consciousness, how we perceive reality, and how the observer problem, right? The observer, we create reality with our observation, double slit experiment, and so I'm not totally convinced that quantum is even a risk, but it's on my radar of stuff to watch.
Okay, I feel like my answer was actually pretty good to him then. It was actually pretty decent. I mean, I essentially said that, look, I can't explain all of the technicalities of this, but firstly, if this is a thing, it's on people's radar, and the security is not static, right?
Totally.
So just like in any other form of cybersecurity, things are constantly being upgraded, and if people are aware of threats or potential threats, then they can handle them.
Right.
And then I did say, secondly, I brought up the idea that, well, if quantum computing theoretically reached a stage where it could hack the Bitcoin network, then surely it could hack like everything else, right?
Yeah.
All the banking systems and financial institutions that people do trust and are comfortable putting trillions and trillions into, then surely it's going to be easier to get those ones than it would be to get Bitcoin. At which point, I guess I kind of shrug and I'm like, all right, I guess we got some big problems. It's like people who say, oh, well, what if there's like a nuclear war and the internet is taken out, and what are you going to do with your Bitcoin in a whole nuclear honestly, if things get that bad, my top concern is probably not going to be, how do I transact my Bitcoin? Like, we're all going to be...
Think about where the question's coming from. If there's so much risk to moving to the new, if they applied that same filter to the system they're living in, they would go, all the risk is the system I'm living in.
Yeah.
Right. But it's just applying to the new. It's
the devil you know, right?
Yeah, devil you know. They seek safety in what they know, even though they know that the world that they 20 years ago looks so much different and so much more volatile in 20 years. They're living in that system that they're a part of, that they don't know why it's a part of it, and they think it's somebody else, right? And they can measure it over a longer time frame, like what's happening, right? What I joke all around time about the only reason we need assets, stock prices, house prices, why people trade these assets, is because we can't store money in money, right? It's ludicrous. So and then people talk about the thing backing money, and so these assets, because money is broken, go sky high. They actually haven't moved at all. They've all fallen if you actually price them in a unit that shows you the truth.
Jeff, man, it's I knew this would be a great conversation. I've
It's
really
awesome.
enjoyed talking to you. I love your insights and wisdom. It's makes my brain, gets the gears moving and starts seeing things from a different perspective. And I say that as someone who's been, talking about Bitcoin for a relatively long time. So thank you for the gift of your wisdom and your time. And,
Thanks for
I
everything you
appreciate
do.
it.
Yeah, thanks.